episode. Today we will be talking about editing a bloody business. Our panel today consists of board members of Read Write Muse, LLC. And our first panel member is Kelsey Keating, the Shield Maiden and Agent Intern. She's the PR representative for Read Write Muse. Her skills as story doctor, beta, and developmental editor are legendary. You can hire her sword-wielding expertise at shieldmaidenforhire.com. Welcome, Kelsey.
Hello.
Howdy-ho. And we have also on the panel today, we have D.M. Kilgore, a.k.a. the literary hit woman, dun, 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 and member of the International English Honor Society, Sigma Tau Delta. She has a dead-eye aim when it comes to assassinating errors in your manuscripts. She's a talented copy editor and proofreader with an eye for detail. D. Kilgore kills the gore in your work in progress. Welcome, D.
Hi.
And last but certainly not least, we have author J.S. Bailey on the panel. Jay has written and published 7 books. She serves as editing manager for Read Write Muse. We're so lucky to have her with us today. Welcome, Jay.
Hi.
So let's just jump right into the topic. You know, I've joked about blood being spilled today and knives being wielded, but it's true that editing can get quite painful. So talk to us, Dee, a little bit about what that means and why editing is so painful.
Well, killing your darlings is one of the most painful lessons you'll learn as a writer, but it's one of the most valuable lessons you'll learn. Being able to identify what your darlings are is really important, and your darlings are going to be your words. But as you write your story, they become more than words. You put your love and your passion and all this attention into them, and they're your children. And so you have this beautiful manuscript, and you just love it, and you've wrote all these witty dialogues and this great plot twist. Everything that you write down that is really like, oh, I am awesome, those are your darlings. And those are the things that you have to, because they're slowing down your pace, and they're stumbling blocks, they're killing your plot. They look really good on your end, but they're the first things that are going to come back with red ink and little side notes like, where are you going with this? And I don't get it. What were we talking about? Too cliche. I'm very guilty of the cliche. So it's really hard though, because when you put all this in, what you have is this love child from your imagination and your soul, and it's just so you, and you're killing a part of yourself when you kill your darlings. But what you put on paper that sounds like, yeah, I'm awesome, those are the things that's going to take the reader out of the story and take you down a rabbit trail, and you don't want to go there.
It's so hard though, because you think,
it's very hard.
Genius! And it comes
very
back.
hard. I had like this much backstory that I had to, yeah, it's very painful.
Oh, I know. I had to cut like 7 chapters of one of my books. The first 7 chapters were just backstory, like you said. What you said, kill your darlings, kill your darlings. That was Stephen King, right? Stephen King?
Stephen King, and Faulkner's also been attributed with that one. Several writers. We all have to kill our darlings no matter who we are.
Yeah, hurts. Okay, there's so many different kinds of editing. Kelsey, can you talk to us a little bit about the different types of editing?
I can. I have a whole list. People get tripped up. They don't know what kind of editor they need at what point, and how much they need, how little they need, if they need. We'll answer that one first. You really, really need. So starting from the very beginning, you've completed your manuscript. Hopefully you've rewritten it. This isn't a first draft because you're just going to spend a lot of money to have to redo a whole lot of stuff. So, you've rewritten it once or twice. Really feel like, okay, this is my story that I'm going to publish. When you get to that point, that's when you stop. That's when you hire a developmental or substantive editor, which is the person that is like an extreme beta read. A beta read you didn't know could be so painful. They go through line by line, digging deep into your story, into your plot, your characters, your world building, looking at it the way a reader would look at it, and they tear apart everything. They take every little thread, every little plot hole, anything that might trip up a reader, anything that doesn't feel quite right or just is cliche or kind of weird or stuff that you thought was perfect, they notice and then shred it to pieces. Then they give it back to you and they talk to you about, okay, well, let's look at this plot hole. You had them drive down the road, and then the road didn't go anywhere, and the very next scene, they were standing somewhere else, and no mention of the car even happened. Where'd the car go? Where'd the car trip go? That was big climax, and then it just vanished. Let's talk about where you can go with that, and they'll discuss with you steps that you can take to fix that error. That's a developmental substantive edit when the word is combined. When you take them apart, what I just described is a substantive edit. If you take them apart, a developmental edit is actually kind of like a co-writer, someone who starts with you early on in the process. You've got the idea, you started it, but you need help thinking through things. You're not completely sure. You know you've got a great idea. You're not 100% sure where to go. You don't want to hire a ghostwriter. You want to do it yourself, but you need help getting there. That's when the phrase developmental writer is used by itself. Once you've gone through and fixed all the edits from that developmental editor and you're feeling pretty good again, like, my story's starting to really shine, that's when you turn to the line edit or the copy edit, depending on how deep you want to go. If you are going the traditional route, you probably only need to go with a copy editor if you really feel strong about it. They will go through all of your pages and look for fact errors or comma, grammar, punctuation, all of that stuff that maybe you'd be blind to, spelling errors, words that should be used, like mixing up round and around, or the different types of there. They're going to go through, the copy editor is going to go through and find all those little errors and correct them, little markings, so that you get them back. A line editor is going to be someone who's going to go through line by line, looking at the sentence structure, seeing if there's a way to write stronger. Can this sentence, it's already a good sentence, but can it be a great sentence? Can they take what you've already done, all of the work you've put in, and just tweak it to make it fantastic? Suddenly that line that was funny is laugh out loud funny. That line that was pretty clever is now witty, and it's going to be quoted, for years to come. And when you've gotten all the really ugly editing done, all the ones that really make you want to cry and feel like, I quit, I'm not writing anymore, I hate the world, I need something to numb the pain. Once you've gotten past that, that's when you hire the proofreader, the final kind of person who goes through. They're the ones that have the eagle eyes, like D&J, who do the sort of thing, they just catch that final little, a lot like copy edits, but it's that stuff that no one else noticed. They see it. And they pick out that, why is this here? And, let's just clean that up and kind of just polish it, and now everybody looks pretty. So proofreaders are necessary.
Jay, let's talk about some common mistakes that you see when you beta different manuscripts.
Well, I've been a beta reader for a few years now, and I'm not sure how many different manuscripts I've gone over, and every author has their own, they have their own types of mistakes. One person might make a certain kind of mistake consistently that somebody else doesn't, so it's interesting to get to see. The biggest mistake I tend to see is with punctuation, and mostly it has to do with punctuating dialogue. And, for example, I've seen at least 2 different writers who like to put the punctuation outside the quotation mark. Like, it could say, how are you today, LaDonna? And the question mark would be outside the final quotation.
That's a grammatical thing for, like, when you're using quotation marks and an emphasis in essay papers, a sort of collegiate sort of thing that they teach you in school, where you do the quotations and then at the end of the quotations you add the period at the end of the sentence. The problem is a lot of writers think that then that's the correct way to do dialogue, and it's not.
Yeah, there's a big gap between academic writing and creative writing. It's huge.
Yeah.
Forget everything you thought you knew.
Right.
And I'm always doing it wrong. No matter which one I'm writing, I'm doing it the wrong way usually. So
I've seen a lot of issues with dialogue tags and the punctuation and capitalization thereof. Now, a dialogue tag is the he said, she said, that goes after dialogue. And sometimes people mix up dialogue tags with the action of the speaker. So, for example, say that there's a knock on the door, and someone says, "I'll get that," and then he walks to the door. So, correct usage would be, "I'll get that, period, closing quotation mark. He went to the door," capital H-E. And a lot of writers will punctuate it as if that were a dialogue tag. So they would say, "I'll get that, comma, closing quotation mark, lowercase h in the he, as he went to the door." And that's not right. Now, one thing that someone could do to change that would be to say, "I'll get that, comma, closing quotation mark, he said as he walked to the door," because then that's an attribute of his speech. He's saying the sentence as he goes to the door. One thing that helps me remember, with the comma and the closing quotation mark, that indicates that someone's saying something. You can't walk to the door a sentence. I'll explain. Something I've also seen a lot is smiling a sentence. Like, "Hi there," she smiled. Well, no, she smiled, but she didn't smile the sentence. So that's a major issue and the most common issue I've seen in manuscripts that I've been to read. Another thing I run into is consistent misspellings. If there's two words that are very similar to each other, like desert into dessert. Because there also is a dessert that is spelled like desert, but not like the sugary, awesome food that you eat after dinner. So
I try to remember that one, 2 S's in the dessert, because you want more dessert than you do sand.
that's the way to remember it, yes.
That's good.
So there's consistent misspellings. And, Word doesn't always catch them. And so if it's an actual word and you're just using the wrong, was it a homophone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Homophone.
So if you're just using the wrong one, Word isn't going to catch it unless it completely changes the grammatical structure of the sentence, and then it might underline it in green, but it's not always going to do that. So just pay really close attention to what you're doing. And another thing I run into is misuse of certain words. It's called a malapropism. For example, someone might say that Bob danced the flamingo instead of saying that Bob danced the flamenco. Flamingo and flamenco are two very different words.
They're going to look different, too, dancing the flamingo.
They totally different meanings. So I do run into that periodically. Now, one issue that I've found with my writing is I'm not sure when it happens. It could either be when I'm initially typing out a rough draft, or it could happen when I go back and revise and don't pay attention to how I rearrange a sentence. I will flip-flop words and not notice it. And when I read back through, I don't register that because all the words are there. They're just in the wrong order. And, it's kind of like that thing that floats around the internet where all the letters are scrambled in a word and like the whole paragraph, and you can still understand what it says. Well, that's kind of what happens with me because I know what my story says. And so I read the sentence, not having any idea that the words are out of order. I just got a beta read back from Katie, and there was one sentence that she found where I said part him of instead of part of him. And I read over that, I don't know how many dozen times, and it just completely went past me. So it's really important to have somebody else look at your work just to catch sloppy mistakes like that. And other things, sometimes there's a typo that gets underlined and you just completely miss it. I'm guilty of that, where it'll underline it in red, and for some reason I just don't even notice that it's underlined in red because I guess I'm reading too fast. So it's really important to have another set of eyes look at your work. At one point in time, I was looking at a Goodreads thread, and I believe it was the Goodreads authors and readers group, this huge group on Goodreads. And this individual was saying that he refused to have anybody beta read or edit his work because it was going to stand on its own.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, oh, this is really bad because, I mean, even best-selling authors have editors. You know, they have people looking over work. Just like everybody makes mistakes. So for someone to be so arrogant to assume that they're not going to make any bloopers or anything in their writing is just crazy. And yeah. And also, you know, editors can point out things that you completely overlooked with your story, you know, things that just don't make sense. When Servant was being edited last year, I had a scene where the character Lupe has been blindfolded and her hands were tied behind her back. And it said in the scene, Lupe didn't know what was fastening her wrists. She didn't know if it was handcuffs or zip ties. You know, in my mind, she didn't know what it was because she couldn't see it. The editor said, why couldn't she hear it?
Oh.
I was like, oh my gosh, you know, handcuffs would make a very different sound from zip ties. So I had to change that. And if my story hadn't been edited, a reader might have noticed that and been like, well, is Lupe deaf?
What's wrong with her?
Didn't say that. Yeah, nobody is immune from mistakes.
No. In our last video last month, Katie made the statement, if you're doing it by yourself, you're doing it wrong. And that's just, you know, that's so true. Jay, I had a question recently about a while and a while, and we were having to look that up. Do you have a website that you go to?
I just did a Google search. I think I typed in like a while, AWHILE, or a space while. And I realized that I had been misusing that like forever and didn't know because Word wasn't catching it. Now, my newest version of Word, which is 2013, I've been using 2003 Word up until this past fall. It catches it and it'll underline it. And I
The blue
don't
underline.
remember exactly how to use AWHILE, just a while, all one word. That's the word I was using. And I realized that all the times I was using it, it was supposed to be a space while. And so I learned something. Then I had to go back and change everything in my current manuscript because I had, I think, 15 instances where I had misused it. So yeah, I just did a Google search for that. If I want to check a definition of a word, I always go to Merriam-Webster.com. It's Merriam-Webster.com. Though I do have an actual Merriam-Webster up on the shelf that I don't get down like I should because I'm lazy.
It's so easy to right-click and search.
Yeah, if I even have the faintest suspicion about a definition of a word, I'll look it up just so I'm absolutely sure I'm using that word right. And I did look up some sites that talk about grammar, and one is Grammarly.com.
Oh, that was what I was going to talk about.
Was the one I was going to mention.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, I haven't personally used it, but I did look it up, and Grammarly.com/handbook looked like it had different things you could click on talking about different parts of grammar. So, yeah.
You can check your text there as well.
Yes.
They have a little, text box that you just put in what you need to check and, try it out. See what you think Grammarly is, and they'll show you the grammar errors that they see. I also use Google a lot, especially when I'm editing for a client. If I come across a word that I don't know or that I'm not sure if they've used it correctly, then I look it up, because before I say, oh, you've used this incorrectly, I have to double check myself. Maybe I've been using it incorrectly and they're the ones that have it. For instance, home in and honed in have two very different meanings and are often confused. I confuse them. And so before I actually was like, oh no, I know the answer to this one. And then I found out, oh no, I'm wrong. So it's one of those things. I love Google. It's quick. You just type in the word, and Merriam-Webster usually is the first thing to pop up with a definition. Or if you want to do this versus that to teach yourself something for quick little things, Google's the king. But make sure your site is reputable. Because you can click on something and it's someone's blog post telling about how they think it's this way, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're right. So it's always good to double check, make sure you have a Grammarly or a Merriam-Webster or something with legitimacy that's telling you the answer to this question and not just someone's musings.
There's also a software. It's gingersoftware.com. One of the things I like about it is it has a personal trainer. So if you have issues with dialogue and commas, you can go in there and practice, and it will show you what you're doing wrong. It'll offer suggestions. It's really neat. They do have, I think they have a free trial, if I remember right. It's, a little expense, but it's worth it if you really need the help. And some of us really need the help. So that's another good one.
I want to have each one of you just give your most stellar advice for selecting an editor to work with. What would you say is the key to finding that right connection? Let's start with Jay.
Well, personally, I choose people who I know and can trust. And when I say people I know, I don't mean like my mom. My mom reads, but she's not an editor. But, I've been networking the past several years, meeting other writers and editors, and if you're friendly with somebody and they're an editor, give them a sample of your work and have them do a sample edit, see if they've got it.
Okay, so you recommend just trying them out one at a time and seeing who connects better. And Kelsey, I'm going to go to you on this one. Along with your advice, do you think that personality is important or honesty? I mean, what stands out?
You have to know what it is you're looking for. When you go for an editor, it's really hard to say. You need honesty. But if you aren't looking for that, if you're looking for someone to tell you, hey, good job, and all you ever want is pats on the back, and you want to feel good about yourself, then go to your closest reader friends who are only readers but they love you, and they don't ever say anything. They're not going to tell you if that dress makes you look fat. They're the friends that are going to be like, that haircut is awesome. Don't listen to anyone else. When you know you look like a fool, give it to those friends. They'll pat you on the back. Don't hire an editor for that. Because an editor who pats you on the back and tells you good job. If anybody's seen the movie Whiplash, part of the one of the sentences, one of the quotes from the movie is, two of the most detrimental words to anyone trying to achieve greatness, I'm loosely quoting, is good job. You need an editor who is going to be, depending on your personality, equal parts truth and grace. If you hire an editor once and you pay them and you go through the process and at the end of it you don't feel like it was the best process, you are not tied down to them.
Dee, would you like to address that? How to choose an editor?
A lot of good information already. I think you're looking for a little bit of chemistry. Friendship is good, but a professional chemistry is also something that I would look for. I'm not going to take a young adult novel and send it to a nonfiction editor. You want to know exactly the genre that your editor prefers to work in, that they legitimately know how to edit your vision without killing your story completely. I think something else, you're looking at a lot of, it's tense. Editing is real tense. You've got to work with somebody where you can dish it out and you can take it as much as they can. There's a lot of mutual respect that you need on both ends of the spectrum. They have to respect your creative genius, but you have to respect their professional editing genius also. So you need that, friendship is really good. I like to have people that I know edit for me because I can trust them. If they tell me it sucks, then I know it sucks. If they tell me it's good, I know it's good. My beta readers are wonderful, but I get a lot of, oh, that's awesome. We can't wait to see you on the New York Times bestseller list. That's not what I need. And if you're serious about this, that's not what anybody needs. You need somebody that's going to get in there and bloody you up a little bit and throw a few punches and make you really sit down and think about your story. So it's a fine line, but you've got to find a balance, and you've got to have that mutual respect and the chemistry to work with your editor.
That's good. Closing remarks? Let's just go back to Jay. Any last little tidbits of advice? Any resources you want to recommend? Leave our audience with?
Well, advice would be, if you're a thin-skinned person, so to speak, get over it. Be No, every time I get either comments back from an editor or a beta reader, and I see all the red, it's like, oh, like, why isn't it perfect? I'm a major perfectionist when I write. I tweak everything to like absolute perfection, but I have to let go of that, and I think it's important for other people to do too. In the past 4 or 5 years, my writing has completely changed, and a lot of that is from people giving feedback on my writing. So my advice is just go with it, get more feedback, and learn from it.
Kelsey?
Know that your editor, if they're really dedicated and you picked them for that reason, is just as invested in your story as you are. It's really hard on your editor for you to turn on them just because they did their job.
And no knee-jerk reactions. Give it
No
time
knee-jerk.
to simmer.
Take time. Take time to let it simmer, let it set. Take your 24 hours or however many you need to cry under your desk, curse the world, and try and call curses down on your editor. That's fine. Just don't open up an email the second you finish reading your edits and tell your editor exactly why they got everything wrong. They have no idea what your plot point is, and frankly, they are the spawn of Satan, and you are driving to their house, and they better sleep with one eye open.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Dee, you got any last little advice for us?
Well, I did, but I think I forgot it.
I know.
Honestly, I think if I could give any advice, it'd be to learn to self-edit. It's what's going to take you from mess to masterpiece before you get the other professional editing done. It's going to be a lot cleaner when it gets to your editor. Read aloud. I do a lot of reading aloud. You've got this box of writer's weapons. Your best weapons is your ability to self-edit. And if you'll do the work before you hand it off, you're going to have so much less coming back with the red ink and the I'm going to kill you because you don't get it. If you could just take time and really go over your work. I hear this a lot, and I know Kelsey brought it up earlier. This is like a huge pet peeve. You go on to the writers' groups, and I just finished my book. Do you think I should have it edited? The answer is always yes. I don't care who you are. The answer is always yes. You get the book edited. You get the book proofread. You don't just send your baby out into the world naked and afraid, and here I am. You have to do the work. So learn to self-edit. Find somebody you have chemistry with. Work with a really good editor, a good beta reader, good proofreader, and that's where you're going to get most of your magic out of your work, is not in what you wrote, but in what comes back to you and then what you rewrite because of it.
That's good. Well, thank you so much, girls, for being here with us today. Next month, let's see, it will be April, and our topic is nurturing creativity in children. And we have a whole different panel coming to talk to us about that. I think you're going to appreciate it. So, I hope you learned something today, and we'll see you next month. Bye!
Bye!